Over the past several days, American politics has entered another explosive moment, and at the center of it all is President Donald Trump and a controversial piece of legislation that is rapidly becoming one of the biggest political battles of the year, the Save America Act. If you've been following the news even casually, you've probably seen this bill trending everywhere. Cable news, political podcasts, social media, and YouTube channels have all been dissecting what this legislation could mean for elections, for Congress, and for the future of American politics. But the biggest reason the debate has exploded over the last few days is because of the aggressive stance Trump himself has taken regarding the bill. The Save America Act is a proposed federal election law that would require Americans to show proof of citizenship in order to register to vote in federal elections, along with stricter identification requirements when casting a ballot. Supporters argue that the goal is simple: ensure that only American citizens vote and strengthen election integrity across the country. Critics, however, say the bill could create new barriers for millions of legitimate voters who may not have easy access to documents like passports or birth certificates. This disagreement has turned the bill into a massive political flashpoint. The legislation already passed the House of Representatives earlier this year in a very close vote that fell almost entirely along party lines, showing just how divided Washington has become over election rules. But the real drama started escalating over the last few days after Trump made a major announcement that stunned both political allies and opponents. In a social media post that immediately went viral, Trump declared that he would refuse to sign any new legislation into law until Congress passes the Save America Act. That statement effectively turned the bill from just another controversial policy debate into a high-stakes political showdown. According to Trump, the legislation should take priority over everything else currently happening in Washington. In his view, securing election integrity is a country-defining fight that must happen immediately. But critics say the move is an unprecedented attempt to pressure Congress by holding other legislation hostage until lawmakers agree to pass the bill. And that's where the political chaos really begins. Because even though Republicans control both chambers of Congress, the Senate still requires 60 votes to move most legislation forward due to the filibuster rule. That means passing the Save America Act could require support from some Democratic senators, something that currently appears extremely unlikely given how strongly Democrats have opposed the bill. Democratic lawmakers argue that the legislation is unnecessary and potentially harmful, pointing to studies showing that voter fraud in federal elections is extremely rare. Several voting rights organizations have also warned that the new requirements could prevent millions of eligible Americans from voting simply because they lack the required documents. Some estimates suggest more than 20 million citizens may not have immediate access to paperwork like a passport or certified birth certificate. Because of this, critics say the bill could disproportionately impact older voters, rural communities, and people who have difficulty accessing official records. Supporters of the bill completely reject that argument. They say the law is simply about verifying citizenship and restoring public confidence in elections after years of controversy and distrust surrounding voting systems. Polling cited by supporters of the legislation shows large numbers of Americans support voter identification requirements and proof of citizenship rules when registering to vote. That divide is exactly why the Save America Act has become such a powerful political symbol. For many Republicans, it represents a long overdue reform to secure elections. For many Democrats, it represents what they see as an unnecessary and potentially dangerous change to the voting system. And now, because of Trump's ultimatum to Congress, the stakes have become even higher. Some political analysts say the move is a classic example of Trump's strategy when dealing with Congress: escalate the situation and force lawmakers to respond publicly. Instead of quietly negotiating behind closed doors, Trump has chosen to make the conflict as visible as possible. That approach has already triggered intense reactions across Washington. Some Republican lawmakers have praised Trump for taking a strong stance and pushing Congress to act quickly on election reforms. Others within the party appear more cautious, worried that tying unrelated. Legislation to a single bill could create political gridlock at a time when the government is already facing multiple challenges. Democrats, meanwhile, have condemned the strategy outright. Several Democratic leaders have accused Trump of trying to bypass normal legislative processes by using political pressure rather than negotiation. Some have even warned that the situation could lead to broader government dysfunction if lawmakers refuse to compromise. At the same time, the debate around the Save America Act has also spilled far beyond Washington. Across the country, state officials, legal experts, and advocacy groups are now weighing in on what the bill could mean if it eventually becomes law. Some election officials are concerned about the logistics of implementing nationwide documentation requirements. Others argue that the federal government should not be interfering with election procedures that have traditionally been handled by individual states. This broader debate highlights something important about the current political climate in the United States. Election rules themselves have become one of the most controversial topics in American politics. In previous decades, discussions about voter registration procedures or identification requirements rarely dominated national headlines. Today, those issues can trigger massive political battles that last for months or even years. And with midterm elections approaching, the timing of this debate is particularly significant. Many analysts believe both political parties see election laws as a critical strategic battleground that could influence future voting outcomes. That reality means the Save America Act is not just a policy proposal. It's also a political weapon in a much larger fight over the future direction of the country. Meanwhile, Trump's decision to escalate the situation by refusing to sign other legislation has added even more pressure to the equation. Some observers believe the move could force Republican leaders in the Senate to explore creative strategies to get the bill passed, including procedural maneuvers that could bypass the traditional filibuster rules. Others believe the bill is unlikely to pass in its current form and may eventually require major revisions or compromises before it can move forward. Either way, the situation is far from settled. The debate over the Save America Act is continuing to evolve almost by the hour, with new statements, interviews, and political reactions appearing across media platforms every day. And if the last few days have shown anything, it's that the political fight surrounding this legislation is only just beginning. For supporters of the bill, this is a crucial moment to push through election reforms they believe are necessary to protect American democracy. For critics, it's a moment to resist what they see as a dangerous attempt to restrict access to voting. And in the middle of that conflict stands Donald Trump, once again proving that few political figures in modern history can ignite a national debate as quickly or as intensely as he can. The coming weeks could determine whether the Save America Act becomes law, gets rewritten, or collapses under the weight of political opposition. But one thing is already clear. The controversy surrounding this bill has reignited one of the most fundamental arguments in American politics: how elections should work, who gets to decide the rules, and how far the federal government should go in shaping the country's democratic process. And as the drama continues unfolding in Washington, millions of Americans are watching closely to see what happens next.